Tori the Crafty Girl here, and recently I went on a cleaning spree and I cleaned out my personal closet, tried everything on, almost everything, and got rid of a ton of stuff, made piles for upcycling, that kind of thing, and I found a pair of clogs, platform plastic clogs, similar to Crocs, that I had had for probably a good year. And never wore them. They just, for something about them, I just thought they were not my thing. I'm not sure why I bought them, but I had them. And so I went on a hunt to find some inspiration for me to upcycle these shoes into something that maybe I would wear. As most of you know, I am way into all different types of crafts. Including one of my favorite crafts, which is crochet. Now, I don't do a lot of content on crochet because it's my escape. It's what I do when, when the cameras aren't rolling, I'm sitting back and I'm just relaxing and getting some mental clarity. So I really enjoy doing it. But I had this idea. I thought, well, how do I turn my love of crochet and these ugly Croc-like shoes into something adorable? So I want to give, first of all, a shout out to Mama Stitches here on YouTube. When I was looking for inspiration, theirs was one of the first videos that popped up, and she does some really cute things. So I want you to make sure to go follow her. And let me show you what I did end up making. Anyway, I'm going to pop her information here, and I'll also tag her video down below. I think she sells patterns on Etsy. So if you're looking for a written pattern, you can absolutely go support her that way. And then she also has some really great tutorials on how she does the process of upcycling her Crocs with granny squares. So I wanted to show you, this was the first pair that I made. And again, these are faux Crocs. These are not, these aren't real Crocs, but this is what I had. So I used what Mama Stitches had recommended for the top portion, and I absolutely adore how this pair turned out. So then I went thrifting to find myself another pair because I'm still not going to pay full price for a pair of Crocs. I'm just not going to do it. So I found this pair right here. This is a totally different style. It's lined. They're a little bit too big for me, but I thought, okay, especially since I'm just going to be playing around with different designs, paying $6 for something that you might destroy is not such a bad deal. So again, this one I just played around and I changed some things with this pattern. Instead of stitching the whole thing on, I used E6000, which for me, I found worked way better, especially with how cheap these shoes are. And then of course for this pair, I had to add a little bow, and I love, love, love how these turned out. So then I had to go buy towels. And while I was out buying towels, I stopped by TJ Maxx, and they had a pair of this style of Crocs. Okay, kind of that little Arizona Birkenstock style. And these were on clearance. So I did pick them up, and I thought, okay, how am I going to make these into something that I might wear? So that is why you are here today, because I'm going to show you how I am going to turn these ugly Crocs like this into something adorable using crochet. Now, with this pair right here, I needed to get inspired. I was like, speak to me, shoe. What do you want to become? So obviously with these styles over here, I just used a few different versions of granny square and granny square triangles. Love a granny square, by the way. But on these, I was a little bit inspired by these little squares. And I thought, oh, well, why don't I just do mini granny squares? And then, of course, I had to decide what color story I wanted to use. So I don't know if it's just because Beetlejuice is in my feed everywhere right now. But these are the colors that I went with. The white, black, really beautiful green. And that's it, white, black, and green. So those are the colors that I decided to go with. And when I say mini granny squares, essentially it's just 2 rounds. 2 rounds of granny stitches is it. And then you get this really cute little pattern that looks like mini granny squares. You can adjust this as much as you want, play with your colors, see what works best for you. But I already had this yarn in my stash. It is cotton. I recommend working with cotton. I love how it works up, and it tends to last a lot longer. And cotton is
much better for the environment than those acrylics that are out there. But with that said, use what you can, okay? There is no judgment on my end, whatever type of yarn you want to use. But I will say for this, I needed it to be really thin or a little bit thinner so that it would fit on each of the straps. So what I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you how to make one little mini granny square. Again, these little mini granny squares are just 2 rounds of granny stitches. So typically when you're working on your granny square, so like this one is 5 rounds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 2 rounds. They are done the exact same way, but you just stop after 2. So it does go very, very quickly, which is awesome. So I'm going to start by showing you how to make the little tiny granny square like this. The next step, I'm going to show you how to attach them. Okay, so we're going to attach them together. Then we're going to do a border around them, and then I'll show you how to attach them to your Crocs. So for this pair right here, for this size, these are a woman size 7 or a man size 5. So with these, what I found works best for the shape is having 4 of your granny squares with a 2.5 millimeter hook for the bottom, and then we're going to use 5 for the top. And then this is the color repeat that I have decided. Again, customize this as much as you want. You could play with, 20 different colors on here. You could change the border color to something that you want to stand out. Really, this is your opportunity to really customize these for whatever makes sense for you that you would actually wear. Again, the whole purpose of this is to turn this ugly shoe into something that you would wear. All right, so to start off by making one of our little mini granny squares, again, it's just 2 rounds of granny clusters. And the one that I'm missing right now in this motif is going to be this one right here. So this one's going to be a black center with a green second round. So we are going to take our cotton yarn. This is K&C cotton in black, and this one is Lion Brand 24/7 in grass. Now, one thing I am going to point out with these little granny squares, because they are going to be attached to a shoe, I am not taking the time to hide all my tails like I typically do, to change colors like I typically do. This is kind of the down and dirty version. You'll see here, in fact, I'll show you. Normally, this is not how I finish my work, but no one's going to see this because it's going to be hidden here. So we are fine with it this way. So we are going to start our granny square with a magic ring. You could also just chain 2 and work right out of the first chain. That is another option for those of you that aren't comfortable doing a magic ring. But we are going to start with our magic ring. And then I like to chain 3 for this particular mini granny square. So I know in most cases, so if you're familiar with crochet, when you're doing double crochet, in most cases, you're probably just going to chain 2. That usually lines up to the same height. But for me, to make sure that I get the right shape, I do chain 3 at the beginning. And then that's going to count as my first double crochet. In US terms, just to clarify, so for granny squares, if you're unfamiliar, all it is a 3 double crochet cluster, and then you repeat that with a chain in between, typically a chain in between, or maybe 2 chains, depending on your preference. So we have 1 chain 3 that's going to count as our first double crochet. Then we're going to yarn over, go into our magic ring, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 more. That's our second double crochet. We're going to do a 3rd double crochet. Okay, and then we're going to chain 1. Okay, first cluster done. Now we're going to do 3 more of those. All right, so we should have a set of 3. That's our first cluster. Set of 3, second cluster, set of 3, third cluster, and set of 3, fourth cluster. And then we do end on a chain 1. Now we're just going to take our yarn tail from our magic ring and we're going to tighten it on up. So once you pull it, the last step is going to be to go into that top chain, so the top of your chain 3. There we go. And we are going to slip stitch, just like that. Now for this project, again, I am doing things the quickest way possible because it won't be noticeable. If I'm working on wearables or something that needs to have perfect finishes, I would do things a little differently. But for this, to finish off the, or to do the color change here, I'm gonna actually finish this round off. So I'm just going to yarn over, pull through again to create a knot. And then I'm just gonna cut off that tail, pull it through. Again, not how I would typically finish this for a color change. I would actually go through the color change and make it seamless. But on this one, it honestly doesn't matter and it's so much faster, especially when you're trying to make this mini. You want to be as efficient as possible. So we just created the center of our cluster, okay? So now we're gonna grab our second color. In this case, it's the grass color. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna start in a corner that is different than where the knot is. You don't want to be on the knot yet. We are going to hide this yarn tail in our work when we get there. So what I typically do is, show you here. So here's our cluster. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then here's that chain 1. I'm going to place my needle right in there, and I'm going to pull this yarn tail up. Okay. Now you could knot this if you wanted to, but again, we are going to secure this in place, so there's really no reason to do that. But then we're just going to, there we go. So we chain 1, chain 2, chain 3. And then tighten it up by just giving a tug on that yarn tail. And now that again is our first double crochet of our cluster. So we're going to yarn over. Now, this is a great little tip for you. This yarn tail that's right here, we're just going to hide it with our double crochets. So just keep it up in your work right here. So we are going to yarn over, create a double crochet. We're going to yarn over, again, making sure that that yarn tail is getting covered up. Do a double crochet. Chain 1, and now we're creating a corner. So because there's a corner, we're going to go right back into that same chain space here. And again, we're just going to continue going over this yarn tail with your double crochets. All right, and then we're going to chain 1 once again. So you'll see our corner piece has 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then here's our chain 1, and then 1, 2, 3. Also in the back, look at our yarn tail is already covered up, so we're just going to end up snipping that off. No more work on trying to hide that when you're done. So now we're going to continue to do our corner clusters. So for this corner over here that has this knot in it, the first cluster we're going to do is just going to be in this little spot. So we're going to start. Now, once you get to the third double crochet and you chain 1, you're going to notice that you're really close to that little knot there. That's a good thing. That's what we want, because we're going to, again, stitch over that yarn tail so that we can just snip it off when we're done. So we will come back into that same chain space, go over the corner here, and then again, chain 1. So let's see what the back of that looks like. So now that one is also hidden. So we'll be able to snip that off and snip that off as well. But don't do it just yet, because I'm going to show you one other thing. All right, so now we're just going to do the same thing. Let's create 2 more corners, and that way we end up with 4 corners for our second round. All right, then again, to finish off the round, we don't have to get fancy because we're going to hide it up with a border. So we are just going to, once again, slip stitch the round to finish it off. Yarn over and pull through to knot, and then we'll just cut that yarn tail and pull it just to tighten it up a little bit. All right, so here is our little mini granny square. We're not quite done yet. We want to finish the back of it. So first thing, we need to tighten up our square again. So we're going to pull that original yarn square. Don't go too hard. You don't want it to break, but you'll see that now our little center has been pulled together. And the reason I told you not to cut off your yarn tails yet is because I actually just use one of the yarn tails that's back here to do a double knot to keep it in place. Okay, so that should keep that center from opening up. And then I'm just going to cut all of these tails close to the granny square so that it's not visible from the outside. So now we can cut off those other 2. just like that. And then the last step is to take a darning needle, and we're gonna hide this last little tail right here. And we're just gonna go right into the back of our work. Just like that. We're gonna pull that through, and then we can snip that off as well. And that is step one. You just need to make your mini granny squares. Now, depending on the size of shoe that you have, the number of your squares will vary, especially if you want to use the same concept, maybe to use them on a different style of shoe, you can certainly do that as well. For me, what I found, once these were done, so if I did 5 up here on the first one and then 4 down here, that actually was the perfect size for me. All right, so now I'm gonna hide all of these tails, and we're gonna come back together, and I'm gonna show you how to do a mattress stitch to attach your squares. All right, so now I have all of my squares for this top round right here. So we have the 5. So all we're gonna do is we're actually just going to do a mattress stitch between all of our squares, and just use a color that coordinates. So they're really, for mattress stitches, they're really going to be hidden. And also we're going to come back. So even on the edges, if you can see a little bit of the color, we're going to come back and do a single crochet all the way around to add a little bit more finish to it. So it's okay if it's visible. So all I'm going to do is, and you can use thread and needle if that works best for you. You could even do top stitch crochet. Whatever method you want to do to connect these is totally, perfect. Again, there's no wrong way to do this, y'all, because every single person has their own way, and that's what makes this so cool, because we can all make it our own. So for me, I'm just going to take a little piece about this big right here, okay? And we are going to do a little mattress stitch. So first thing that I want to tell you to do, or first thing that I do, just to show you, because we're not blocking these little tiny things, these little tiny squares, they are a little wonky, some are shaped a little differently. So I take the knotted end, okay, the knotted end on this side, and I try to get all those knotted ends all on the same side. So to do our mattress stitch, we are, again, whichever method you want. And remember, I'm chaining 1 between my clusters. So I'm just going to come up here, just leaving a tail so that I can tie this off when I'm done on this corner. And then I'm going to come over on this side and find that little chain space. And then I'm going to go down and then up. And then back on this side, stitch those. And essentially all you're doing is just stitching these across from one side to another. Just don't miss any, and you should have the exact same number of stitches. All right, so we have now essentially done our first stitch here, but we're gonna tighten this together. So we're just gonna pull, you can pull on both ends, just like that. And then what you're going to do, again, because this is a very quick project, we're not trying to be perfect here, we're going to come back to the back on the other side, and we're just going to do a single knot to tie this off. All right, so we're just tying a single knot essentially in the back just to hold it in place. And then I'm moving it to the center. And then I'm going to do the same on this side. Okay. And then again, I'm just going to meet the other yarn tail in the center. And the reason I do that is because now, once again, we are just going to do a double knot to tie these 2 yarn tails together so they don't go anywhere. And then we can cut them off. Again, this just saves time, but if you did want to just work those into your work, you certainly can do that. All right. So there's our first little thing stitched. And again, don't stress out if it looks a little wonky, because we are going to come back and do a border. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to continue stitching each of these together and tying off the ends. And then once I'm done with that, I'm just going to go around to finish off the little strap here. All right, so to do the border around, we are just going to do a single crochet, and I'm going to start in one of the corner chain spaces here. So just like we did before, again, because it's going to be hidden, all I'm going to do is pull my yarn tail through. I'm just going to chain one time, and then I'm going to chain again and go back into that same corner. That gives us that little bit of a shape here for the corner. So when we get back and slip stitch, we'll have a nice clean corner. So then we're just going to go in and do a single crochet in each of the stitches. Now, when you get to the corner, so when you get to that corner piece, we're not quite there yet, but when you get to the corner piece, you're just going to do a single crochet in the corner. You're going to chain one, and then you're going to do a single crochet once again in the same corner. And that'll just give us a nice, like I said before, a nice clean corner. And then we're going to continue doing single crochet all the way around. Now, when you get to the join right here, remember I said it really wouldn't matter if your mattress stitches were showing a little bit, because we are going to go into the corner. Okay, it's already stitched together. We're going to go into the corner, pull up, do a single crochet, and then we're going to come to this side over here, and again, go into the corner and pull up. So now we have a nice clean edge right there, and then we're going to continue through our piece. Now, one thing I wanted to show you, but I wanted to get to a different color just to make it a little bit easier to see. As you're crocheting the border, you're going to get to those chain spaces right here. You're just going to go into the chain space just like that and do a single crochet. Okay. And then just do that all the way around your piece. And when you're done, you're going to have just this nice little border. It just gives it a nice, clean, finished look. All right, so now when you get back to that corner, all we're going to do is slip stitch right into there, pull it through, and again, yarn over and pull through to knot it off. Then once again on the back, we can tie these off and snip those, and this one will be done as well. Okay, so now we have all of our pieces for our straps. And again, this is just the most basic version. You could, add all kinds of things on here. But essentially, we are going to have this longer one go across the top here, the shorter one go here, longer one here, and shorter one here. So this is the layout of how I want them to go. And again, I'm mirroring the color scheme on both sides. Just for me, that makes sense. So let's talk about connecting your pieces. There are many ways you can do this. So for this pair right here, I stitched this on all the way around. I will tell you, it took forever. It was super painful and it was unnecessary. So if you want to stitch them on, in fact, if you decide you want to sell shoes like this, it might make sense to stitch them on if that's comfortable for you. With this pair right here, because I was experimenting, I did use E6000 and it is perfect. E6000 for Crocs and yarn is going to be the method that I use going forward. I've also heard people use glue. Glue gun, I wouldn't say that. I love my glue gun, but not for something like this. So you could stitch it all on. You also, if you wanted to, if you were doing things a little differently, you could glue on or stitch on some Velcro, put Velcro on the back and then make it removable. So then that way you could switch it out if you wanted to as well. And then I had a really great suggestion from a community member and said, what if you put snaps on them so you could snap it off? Heck yeah, you could easily just like hot glue or E6000 some snaps on here and have snaps on here and then just, maybe snap down the sides. There are so many ways that you can connect this, but we, my friends, are just gonna go with the tried and true method, E6000. All right, so first thing, let's go ahead and take off this tag now that we are ready to connect them. A little Crocs tag. And I always want to line up the center first. So we are going to have this one is going to be at the top here. That's going to be the center. I didn't mention, but these little pins are going to come in really handy because these will actually go through the plastic and the yarn and help hold everything into place. So I definitely recommend just using some pins. So let's take a look here at how we want this aligned. All right, so to me that looks good. You can decide, they have a little bit of overhang, so it's up to you how you want that to be. I like it just like this. So let's go ahead. We're gonna start, like I said, I wanna start at the top. Okay, so that'll start us off in our first position. Keep that there so it doesn't move. So now let's go ahead, we'll glue down and over and back up. All right, so I'm just going to continue to do that, pinning it in place. Once I'm done with both of them, I'm going to let them cure for a couple of hours just so that they don't slide off. And then we'll come back together and see how they turned out. All right, so now I've had a chance to let the glue cure. I also did just a little chain on each of these and added a couple of little charms. Again, just different ways that you can customize these to whatever works for you. So these, my vision is I can tie these around my ankles and create a little bow just to give it a little bit of a little bit more dimension. So that is how to turn your ugly Crocs into something adorable. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, everybody, see ya!